I grew up I was born in 1981, and I went to a computer camp when I was 12. And it's the 90s, and computers are new, and in the computer camp I went to, there were 24 students, 2 of them were women. And so at my youngest of young ages, women are already not coming to the camp or self-selecting out or not applying, or something about it means that there's actually girls who are coming to computer camp. And you know, I'm a 12-year-old boy, and as far as I can tell, this is just, you know, I'm learning how the world works. And I have all these like formative things that broke me. You know, I'm 12 years old, I'm watching movies and playing video games, and every movie I watch, it's a white guy that's the hero. It's like an alien or a dinosaur or somebody in a turban who's the bad guy. And the women are the prizes, right? And this is just like how our culture is. You know, years later, I grow up and I go to University of Waterloo Computer Science, and it's even more pronounced. I've got a class mostly young men, and we have other diversity problems where I'm getting introduced to. At Waterloo, we had a slur for the Chinese students who didn't speak English socially. They were Chinese students who speak, you know, Cantonese, Mandarin socially. We'd call them fobs. Has anybody heard this word? Fresh off the boat. So it's like now it's a hit ABC series, but it's also a racial slur. I did really good in school apparently, and I got to go to Google in 2006, and I'm a professional software engineer. And so far, I'm an adult, and this career of programmers and computer enthusiasts are men continues. And my anecdote from Google was I got introduced to this term that is really weird. I got introduced to this term called diversity candidate. And so at Google, the company's like basically always interviewing. And I hear this word diversity candidate, and it's like, okay, so this is our hiring process, and this is our hiring process for black people and women. And they're slightly different because we are broken and we're trying to fix the thing. The intentions are right, but the execution is weird. And like for me, being a person who's like, oh, it's because women and black people aren't interested in computers, right? I lived my entire life seeing that they're not here. I felt that like, this is like first alarm bells that something is really weird, and it's sad that like I'm finally feeling I'm 25 years old at this point, and I'm finally realizing like this isn't actually like natural how this thing's supposed to be working. It's broken. Throughout all of these things, I'm a voracious consumer of media. In the 90s, I'm reading lots of magazines. In the 2000s, it's like magazines and blogs. And for like, the last decade, I've been doing lots of blogs and lots of social networks. And it's like an echo chamber where I'm reading these magazines, and it's a bunch of white dudes who look like me, and I'm like, that's who I want to be. And I'm not surprised when I'm at Google or Waterloo Computer Science or even Computer Camp that there's no diversity in that group. I'm at this programming conference just like 4 years ago, and this has been my entire life. And it's been a thing that's broken in the industry, but it was never really me. And I'm talking to somebody, and I talk to all the white guys who look like me, and like the opening courting line is like, "What's your programming language?" Right? And when I see a woman, it's like, it's like, "Where do you work?" or something like that. That isn't "What's your programming language?" And even though I'm at a programming conference, I realize that like this bias is like, it's like clawed its way into me, and I've like normalized it, and it's become like something where I've started to perpetuate this problem. And so this is like where I'm like, holy crap, I'm part of the problem. So basically, I decided to start following a bunch of women on social media and go to talks given by women at tech conferences. And my goal was, despite the fact that my universe is just like totally unbalanced, I wanted to make sure that the media I consume is more balanced. And so I've got just like 15 of my favorite tweets by women programmers and women software people. I just wanted to like read through them and like, then I'm going to talk about sort of like the consequences of this. So @NotWaldorf says, I wrote down everything I know about how emoji gets rendered. This is like pure technical exciting. Jessica Kerr, uniform tech across an organization adds legibility at the cost of coupling. Now you can move people sideways, but you can't move the tech forward. So this is like a really thoughtful thing about how to like arrange your software stack at your big company. Ask Jocelyn Rose, if you really want to understand something, teach it to someone. There's a lot of women programmers who have a growth mindset, and we talk about diversity as like, diversity is good for diversity's sake, but diversity is great for lots of reasons. Diversity's sake is just one of the reasons. I found that like a lot of the guys I've worked with have like a very sort of like competitive, I want to win, I want you to lose sort of attitude, and a lot of the women programmers I've worked with, through whatever reasons, have different backgrounds, and there's a lot of growth mindset in women. So like Jocelyn Rose is like, let's teach people stuff. Gwen says, feelings way smarter than I actually am because I looked at the source code and found out how the platform does something. I love open source. Raquel says, asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And she writes a blog, and this is like really cool, and this is not a thing that dude programmers say. They don't say asking for help is a sign of strength. We say, if you can't figure it out, you're a fool. Right? @Joe44 says, in 2014, an 11-year-old taught President Obama to code. Today he announced a $4 billion deal to teach all kids to code. Sienna Time says, I'm not the first to say this, but where do you think senior engineers come from? Not trees. Invest in your junior talent. Nifty Nay says, people are the product of an organization. 10x programmers are something that can be grown and harvested, like plants and ideas. Julie Evans, absolutely everybody should follow @Bork on Twitter. She's one of my favorite Canadian female programmers. She says, how to blog about code and give 0 fucks. Maybe my favorite article, encouragement to blog ever. She's like one of my programming heroes. Somebody asked on Twitter, what kind of person aspires to be a manager? And this is like the tech bro thing about there's programming, which is like real and concrete, and then there's management, which is like soft and fluffy and humans are annoying. Erica says, the kind of person who gets their kicks trying to help others to succeed and spends time thinking, how can I make my team better? @Evaside says, software developers, when someone asks you to code something sketchy or unethical, it's up to you to say no. Hello tech industry right now, right? And my Tam Van says, I've spent a decade in tech, this isn't my first rodeo. And I've been like, I'm riding the bulls in the rodeo, yeah. And the guy says, for fuck's sake, people, have read so many tweets and messages today where people just assume the gender of a programmer is male. Quit with the he, him, his. We're really guilty of this. This is like a very strong sign of like our implicit bias. And like I said, I have it. @Feministy, recruiting diverse candidates from other companies doesn't increase the diversity of the field, create new opportunities. And this is like a problem I face as somebody who's trying to hire in tech. And my last one is just a nice feel good one. Ash says, I love that nice is a cultural identity for Canadians. So that's a bunch of tweets, and I started following tons and tons of women and black people and people who don't look like me on social media, not because they needed followers, but because I wanted to make myself a better programmer. And I really encourage y'all to do likewise. This is like a really good way to become a better programmer and potentially also a better person. I also want to say that if you're a woman in STEM and you use social media, thank you for helping me to overcome my biases. I'm still working on it. And also, thank you for showing the 12-year-old girls of 2017 that they should go to computer camp. So, thank you.